Senator Smith.
Can we have respect in this chamber for the Senate chamber?
Anger boiled over during a late Friday night session of the Iowa Senate as a 30-page amendment was tacked on to a one-page bill on the use of county seals. But the amendment has nothing to do with logos and everything to do with the rules of Iowa elections. Among the changes, preventing the Secretary of State from sending absentee ballot request forms to every registered voter, something Republican Secretary of State Paul Pate did before last week's primary.
So I'm not going to support this ever, but I sure think that the abuse that went down with that ruling is beyond the pale.
Democrats are furious, yet powerless to stop it if Republicans push it through. This despite an overwhelming majority of Iowans that cast mail-in ballots. In Linn County alone, 85% of all votes cast were by absentee, boosting participation, all while limiting the spread of COVID-19. Even without any evidence, some Republicans, including President Trump, claim absentee voting leads to fraud.
I think that mail-in voting is a terrible thing.
Now election officials are asking a simple question about all of this.
Why are we coming out of one of the most successful elections, the highest turnout since 1994, across the state, in Linn County? Why are we doing this? Why are we being punished for what appears to be a very fantastic election?
In a letter to lawmakers, the State Association of County Auditors said, quote, "We hope that the legislature will reject House File 2486, not just in response to the concerns of county auditors, but out of respect to the hundreds of thousands of Iowa voters who just exercised their rights in the most basic act of democratic government without having to choose between their rights and their health." During a taping of Iowa Press for Iowa PBS, Republican leaders didn't discuss the changes to the absentee rules, but simply said they wanted campaigns to know what the rules are before voting begins.
We can't go into an election with unknowns as far as will absentees be mailed out or will they not? Will date changes change from 29 days to 49?
The legislature weighing in and making sure that that decision is made, providing that clarity for campaigns moving into November.
Now, I did reach out to Secretary of State Paul Pate about this. In a statement, he again celebrated the efforts that led to increased participation in last week's primary. In the past, the Secretary has told me he would consider sending absentee ballot requests to every registered voter again before the November election. As for the effort by some Republicans to limit his authority to make such an action, he said, quote, "I stand by my decision." Nick Weig, Iowa's News Now. A recent CBS News poll found more than 80% of Americans support DACA protection for Dreamers, including more than 70% of Republicans. Today's ruling by the Supreme Court reminded those directly impacted by DACA that there is still much more work left to do.
I'm so happy when I hear that. Really, really happy.
Angelica Rodriguez came to America more than 20 years ago when she was 14. She lived in the shadows until President Obama allowed children like her to register with the government in exchange for protection from deportation.
So now you have more opportunities and you have a lot of, jobs to choose.
Nilvia Rodriguez agrees. She was barely a year old when she came to America.
We came escaping domestic violence from my biological father. And my mom's only family was here in the United States.
Rodriguez tells me she actually renewed her federal documents early, hoping it would buy her time if the Supreme Court allowed DACA protections to end.
It was very unexpected.
Now she works with others like her advocating for real change, and that would take a formal law passed by Congress and signed by the president.
So that we don't have to keep relying on the Supreme Court and the presidents to pass temporary measures to protect us.
And she reminds all voters that change only happens when voters look beyond the person occupying the White House.
That we're not just voting for president, we're voting for our representatives, senators, and this is where the change can happen.
Nick Weig, Iowa's News Now.
So today I want to congratulate President-elect Joe Biden.
After more than 5 weeks, the top Republican on Capitol Hill recognizes the 46th president will be sworn in on January 20th.
Joseph R. Biden has received 16 votes for President of the United States.
The shift in tone comes after the Electoral College met in all 50 states to formally cast their votes for former Vice President Biden and President Trump. The often overlooked vote was closely watched because President Trump and his supporters had filed dozens of lawsuits challenging the results, and some threatened violence against those casting the 638 votes that decide the race.
I'm just pleased that I got a chance to do it this year.
David Chung was one of 6 Republicans elected to cast their votes for President Trump Monday on behalf of the voters of Iowa. And while he's disappointed in the outcome, he says it's time to move on.
We have to face the reality that we will not hold the presidency. We don't have the House.
He says electors do not deserve to be threatened for doing their constitutional duty, whether they vote for Biden this year or President Trump in 2016. And while his candidate for president did not win this time, he's optimistic for his party and the country.
I feel good about the future. Like I said, in the state, our results were very, very good. And across the country, really, we beat expectations is always a good thing.
When Senator Chuck Grassley announced at 87 that he had contracted COVID-19, many were concerned because he falls into a high-risk category.
I was very, very fortunate. I've talked to so many people that a month ago thought they were over it and they're still coughing or got other problems, can't smell or taste.
Grassley says besides a little weakness, none of that happened. In fact,
but I made a point of going out and doing my regular 2-mile jog each morning when I'm out there by myself, so I don't have to worry about hurting anybody else with the virus.
After literally running through the virus, the senator and his colleagues now qualify for the vaccine. But he tells me he's in no rush to get it.
I would not consider myself a high priority, even though I'm in my 80s.
Looking to the next session of Congress, the 7-term Republican hopes to again chair the Judiciary Committee, this time without a political ally in the White House.
It looks like we're going to have a President Biden.
Grassley says he hasn't spoke to his longtime colleague in the Senate, but says he's never reached out to a president-elect before inauguration.
If he calls me, I see that as an opportunity to serve Iowans, because whether we have a Republican or Democrat president, I will try to work with them where we agree or where we can reach an agreement.
One of the top responsibilities for the judiciary will be to confirm President-elect Biden's pick for Attorney General. Among the names floated, outgoing Alabama Senator Doug Jones.
And if Jones would be that, I would feel comfortable working with him. You know, you don't know either how any of these people would be as an Attorney General, but I think it's kind of speculative for me to talk about any of them until they actually get nominated.
As for the 2020 election, Grassley is proud of the gains Republicans made, even while losing the executive branch.
I suppose it'd be more Republicans than Democrats wanted Biden to be president, but they were very Republican when you get down ticket. And that was pretty clear in Iowa, pretty clear in the U.S. House of Representatives.
And for the first time, Iowa is sending more women than men to the 117th session of Congress, something the senator says is long overdue.
And that's been going on for 20 years, but it's kind of reached a peak where you can really see the benefits of more women at lower levels of government coming into the Congress of the United States, and the more women, the better.
Now, when election season comes for Grassley again, he will be 89, but this avid jogger says he's not sure whether it's time to call it a career.
In a little while, like a few months, I will make an announcement, and I don't have much to say until I make an announcement.
Now, when Senator Grassley isolated himself after contracting COVID-19, it broke his record 27-year streak of never missing a vote in the Senate. That's nearly 9,000 votes. The last time he missed a vote before that was when he was in Iowa during the floods of '93. Nick Weig, Iowa's News Now. With less than 5 months to go until Election Day, we now have our first scientific snapshot in the race for U.S. Senate here in Iowa, and this race is closer than anyone would have thought this time a year ago. That's because Republican Senator Joni Ernst was riding high on strong poll numbers, showing a majority of Iowans supported her work on Capitol Hill. But in just a year, that support has taken a nosedive. That's according to the Des Moines Register's Iowa poll, and it's now showing up in the senator's bid for a second 6-year term. The new Iowa poll out Saturday shows Senator Ernst trailing Democrat challenger Teresa Greenfield by 3 points. That's within the margin of error, making this contest a dead heat, one that was not on many radars a few months ago. But it is now, and with the balance of power in the Senate on the line, millions of dollars will now be spent trying to convince Iowa voters to back a certain candidate. Greenfield was the pick of most establishment Democrats to challenge Ernst. The farm kid lost her first husband to a workplace accident and credits union benefits with saving her young family. Senator Ernst is recently divorced. The combat veteran and fellow farm kid has launched bipartisan efforts to combat sexual assault in the military, something the now senator says she experienced while in the service. Greenfield is honing much of her attacks on Senator Ernst over her vote to repeal Obamacare, while the Ernst campaign is taking aim at Greenfield's record as a businesswoman in Des Moines. Either way, these new numbers will undoubtedly have both sides opening up their war chests as they seek a big win come November. Nick Weig, Iowa's News Now.
I decided then I'm going to try for one more term, as I said at the time, so I can do my best to check his worst excesses.
Now, with President Trump on his way out, so is Congressman Loebsack.
I was hopeful that he would be a one-term president. That's the way it's turning out. So it's clearly time for me to leave and exit for someone else to take my place.
Often a moderate voice in Congress, Loebsack hopes others seeking compromise rather than polarization will grow louder.
I'm hoping that the remaining folks who are in the middle and willing to work with the other side of the aisle maybe will have a little bit more clout than they had in the past. We'll see if that works out.
Now, the congressman is looking back on what he feels were his biggest achievements for Iowa.
Ethanol, biodiesel, worked really hard on wind energy, and then on rural broadband, something really, really important and dear to my heart.
And even those votes he now believes were a mistake, including his vote to approve a controversial pipeline.
The Keystone vote is something that, I look back on and wish I perhaps had not voted the way I did, but, I made a choice at that time. That was the right thing to do.
Loebsack also made a note of largely avoiding the spotlight that many on Capitol Hill find on cable news programs.
Because they are megaphones for the extremes. And they are a part of why we have the problems that we have now.
Loebsack admits leaving his post eliminates his sway in the Democratic Party, but he does have a warning to those seeking to pull his party away from the center.
I don't want the Democratic Party to go so far in a particular direction that it's going to jeopardize the chances of victory in other parts of the country, and it's going to turn off members of other people in other parts of the country. And